Good morning and welcome to Word for the Week. And I'm continuing with my word for the week about having courage. And it's entitled Jacob, the story about Jacob. And the story of Jacob and Esau is full of deceit and struggle. Jacob and Esau were twin brothers born to Isaac and Rebekah. Jacob's name means supplanter or deceiver. But God one day would change that name to Israel. Even before they were born, the brothers struggled with each other in their mother's womb. Rebekah asked God, why was this happening? And God said in Genesis 25, verse 23, two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. This promise was given to this family, but this family hadn't learned from their father and grandfather Abraham that they must listen and believe God's promises. They took things into their own hands, and this is where it all went so wrong. We presume that Isaac heard the promise and that he too disobeyed, as he favoured Esau, while Rebekah favoured Jacob. This created great family tension and strife, and there was much trickery and deceit involved. Read the story for yourself in Genesis 26, verse 34 to the end of chapter 35. As I said, I'm speaking about courage, but before I get to that particular part of the story, I'll just continue with a backdrop. Now Esau sold his birthright for a pot of stew, and Jacob asked him for the birthright in exchange for the stew. Esau easily gave it away. Then later, Jacob and his mother tricked his father Isaac into blessing him as the firstborn. God had already promised that this would happen, but they were trying to manipulate the promise, basing it on a lie that had to sustain another lie and another lie. A tangled web had begun to be woven. In Genesis chapter 27, verses 21 to 46, we read of that. Now Esau and Isaac were devastated, and Esau wanted Jacob dead. Jacob had to leave his family in a big hurry, and again his mother manipulated the plan, and this tangled web got even more tangled. The outcomes were he never saw his mother again. He was deceived by his mother's brother Laban. His family life was full of conflict. He was exiled from his family for years. His and his mother's scheming to force God's hand led to disobedience, more deception, and great fear. We must never try to force God's hand. It reminds me of a cocoon which is snipped to allow the butterfly an easier exit. But as it emerges, the beautiful butterfly dies. It's the wrong time and the wrong way. And Jacob suffered. He had to pay a price which lasted for 14 years. He then received his desired wife, and God blessed him with wealth, livestock, and children, even after this long and tangled time. However, Jacob still had fear in his heart of his brother. Jacob was going home to Canaan after 14 years and became overcome with fear. Would Esau still want to kill him? And he lost his courage. However, this time he sought God, and he sought him on his knees. Previously, on his journey to Laban, he had an encounter with God where he dreamed about a ladder going up to heaven. In that place, renamed Bethel, Jacob received God's promise of great future blessing. You can read that in Genesis chapter 28. Now he has another encounter with God. But first he prays. His fear took him to his knees. Is that where we go when we are fearful or struggling with difficult things in our lives? In Genesis 32, we read some extraordinary things. In verse 9, Jacob reminds God of his promise to him. In verse 10, he comes to God in humility. In verse 11, he asks for deliverance. And in verse 24, he goes alone to be with God and stirred himself to hang on to God. Jacob spread out his cares and fears before God. When we're afraid, troubled, or in pain, in isolation and loneliness, with family struggles, with financial difficulties, and when we need courage, this is a good pattern of prayer. Get alone with God. Come in humility before him. Remind him of the promises in his word. Ask for his deliverance. Stir yourself. Hang on to God for his answer. Jacob stirred himself to action, to take hold of God. In fact, God says, "Let me go." But Jacob hung on tightly. It was painful because it disjointed his hip. But it changed Jacob, and God even changed his name. Our difficulties may be painful, but hang on to God and he will change you. Trust God, believe his promises. This struggle with God was not just physical, it was spiritual as well. He wept and begged God's favour. Have we ever prayed in that way? I have, and it's amazing how God meets us, blesses us, and changes us. Jacob went on his way limping as a memorial of struggle and blessing. Then, almost immediately, he sees Esau in the distance. Does he start to panic? I'm not quite sure. But eventually, he bows down 7 times in front of Esau, his elder brother, and Esau runs to him, holds him, kisses him, and they weep together. Wow, what a change of circumstance. What does this say to you? God is a miraculous God. He works on our behalf to give us courage. Lean on him today. Commit to him afresh. Repent and come back to him if needs be. And then you will see him work. A final thought. As we are blessed and helped through our fears and through our struggles, God will give us the courage to pass that blessing on to others. Keep his commands, walk in his spirit, be tender-hearted and loving, then our lives and ministries will be a blessing to others. Thank you for listening and for being here today. Next week, I'll bring you another word about courage. Thank you. Goodbye.